Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing Logan's Run. So Logan's Run came out in 1976 and is a science fiction film. This film takes place in the year 2274 and everybody lives inside these giant domes, and each and every individual person is having a hedonistic lifestyle where they're essentially able to do whatever they want. However, there is one catch, and the catch is that at the age of 30 everyone has to go through this rite of Carrousel. And what Carrousel is, it's this ritual that people go through when they reach 30 where they are essentially renewed. Although what we later find out is that this process of being renewed is actually just killing them. So when they reach the age of 30 they're essentially removed because of the need to, keep up with all these resources, and essentially overpopulation is a problem. So they have to get rid of the people. So in this film we have Michael York in the lead role as Logan, and we also get Jenny Agutter as Jessica. And these two characters, these are the main focus of the film. So Logan is what is called a Sandman, and he is essentially in charge of catching runners, who are people who are running away from this Carrousel ritual and want to escape. However, Logan eventually has a bit of a dilemma when he is forced to eventually go under the Carrousel ritual himself, and therefore goes on a run and is looking out for this sanctuary, which is a place where apparently all these runners go to as a safe space to escape from everything. So this is the first time that I had ever properly seen this film. So I had seen clips of it before on television, but in terms of actually sitting down and watching it properly, I think this was definitely the first time I properly understood the film and actually absorbed it properly. And as a classic science fiction film, I think I enjoyed it very much. I think it's an entertaining film. It's got a very interesting plot. I do sometimes like these science fiction films that give different views of the future, and the idea of, once you reach the age of 30, that you actually have to be gotten rid of is quite interesting, really. We get lots of special effects in this film, obviously being a science fiction film. And I have to say, I think quite a lot of the effects haven't aged particularly well, particularly when you consider that the year after this, 1977, the first Star Wars film came out. And when you compare the special effects in Star Wars to this really gets left behind. And we get this interesting sequence at the start where we're introduced to the area, and it's supposed to be showing us this whole area where everybody's living. But I could tell straight away that what I'm looking at is simply a miniature set with all these little models, and that they're only a few inches high. And it's really obvious looking at it. I don't know what was to look at when the film came out, but you can tell with these little trains whizzing by that it's just a miniature set. But then again, I can sort of forgive it for that, because I was able to view it properly and see it as a large area for the purpose of the film, so that was fine. What is very interesting about this film is the music, actually. It was composed by Jerry Goldsmith, and Jerry Goldsmith is probably one of the best film score composers. He did an excellent score for the film Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, which is a brilliant film in itself and really has an excellent score. The film score for this is really futuristic sounding, and it's very bleepy and bloppy, and certainly really fits in with the tone of the film. Though I did find it a little bit annoying after a while with the music going everywhere, but I suppose it's to go with the theme of the film, with them going on the run and trying to escape. It really ramps up that tension quite highly, so for that I can certainly understand why it was necessary to have that music going. And we also get an appearance by Peter Ustinov in this movie. He plays the old man, and we get some really quite funny sequences when Logan and Jessica, they find the old man and they're so interested to see what a cat is, because they've never seen a cat before, and then they look at the old man and say, "Those cracks on your face, do they hurt?" and things like that. So it seems like this that really make the film interesting, seen as a dystopian or utopian worldview. And Peter Ustinov is an excellent actor, although to be honest he doesn't really get very much screen time here, and is probably slightly underused. What I did really enjoy about this film was the use of colour, because this film is very colourful. It's very bright and really gives an interesting view of the future. All these different locations, all their clothes and everything. They really give a real sense of the future, and they really make it a really interesting vision. I also do like some of the special effects, particularly within the Carrousel sequence. That must have been a nightmare to film, but in the sequence where these characters undergo the rite of Carrousel, they essentially all rise up into the air and they're all floating around in a circle. And I have to say, I was really impressed by how that sequence looked. It really did look like they're actually floating around, and just was a spectacular thing to see on screen. Although it's a shame some of the other special effects in the film are actually particularly bad, particularly in this ice cavern scene where there's lots of ice and sleet all falling down, and it just looks like it's falling right in front of the screen instead of actually being in the film. But then again, I can forgive it for that. But as a classic science fiction film of the time, I think this really did pave the way for quite a lot of other films like Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and all those other type of movies, because around this time these type of science fiction films were not particularly popular, and this film did fairly well at the box office. It wasn't a humongous hit. It's one of those films that has gone on to become a cult classic, and it's very much a movie of its time. And if you compare this with lots of other science fiction films that came a few years before, this actually is much better than those. And in terms of the acting, I think actually the acting is actually fairly good in my opinion, although the dialogue itself is obviously a little bit cheesy, a little bit campy at times, but it's a science fiction film. It's set far in the future, so it's to be expected for this kind of film. That's what the characters are talking about is obviously things that we might not be able to relate to anyway. One of the things I did find quite funny about this film was that even though it's set in the year 2274, all the characters still have those terrible 1970s haircuts. But then again, at the time they didn't know what haircuts would be like in the future, or what indeed they will be like in the year 2274. So it's just one of those things where obviously at the time it seemed like, that could be the way it is. But you could say the same thing about science fiction films made now. Maybe in 30 years time people look back and think, films now look ridiculous. It's just all to do with changing with the times. Just to sum up, I have to say Logan's Run as a classic sci-fi, I think I enjoyed it very much. For all of its flaws, it's not a perfect film. It is enjoyable. I think there are far better science fiction films out there. However, I do sometimes like to watch a film like this just because it's a classic cult film which has gone on to become very well recognised and is still loved by lots of people. So for that reason, I'm going to give Logan's Run a rating of 7 out of 10. And if you enjoy 1970s sci-fi films, then this is a must-see. If not, okay, maybe give it a miss, but it's entirely up to you. So there we go. So that is my review of Logan's Run. So what do you guys think? Have you seen Logan's Run? Be sure to check it out if you think you like it. If you don't, that's fine. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.